For many years, the world measured power by how much money a country had, how big its army was, or how many factories it could build. The nations with the most tanks, oil, and influence at the United Nations were considered the superpowers. But things are changing. When Trump talks about restricting immigration or limiting H-1B visas, is not only speaking to his voter base, he's signaling something deeper. A realization that America's control over the world's technological future is no longer guaranteed. The foundation of Silicon Valley was built on global talent. It was built on people from all over the world, especially India, bringing their minds, dreams, and discipline to create products that shape the modern world. And now these people are not just filling jobs. They are leading the companies. They are defining the strategy. They are deciding the future. This new form of power does not belong to governments. It belongs to thinkers. And those thinkers are often engineers and scientists who grew up with very little but learned how to think clearly, work hard, and solve difficult problems. That's why Indian professionals have become so essential to the global economy. They don't just understand technology. They understand how to scale it, how to build business models around it, and how to manage it across continents and cultures. That combination is rare and powerful. Trump sees this. He sees that when Sun Pichai speaks, the world listens. When Satya Nadella makes a move, markets react. These leaders are no longer in the background. They are at the front of global decision-making, and they're not politicians. They don't control armies or elections, but they control platforms that influence billions of lives. That kind of influence is something traditional political systems are not used to. It scares them because it's hard to regulate, hard to predict, and impossible to replace. Trump's fear, therefore, is not personal. It's structural. He understands that companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and others are no longer purely American in culture or leadership. They are global in nature, powered by minds from Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, and Mumbai. These minds are not just coding software. They are shaping the way artificial intelligence will evolve, how cloud infrastructure is built, how data privacy will be enforced, and how digital economies are structured. These are not small matters. They influence national security, economic stability, and social behavior. And when that influence rests in the hands of people who were once seen as outsiders, it changes the entire equation. This is the shift from capital to capability. You can no longer buy innovation with money alone. You need talent. You need people who understand systems, who are hungry to grow, and who can lead with vision. That's why companies are choosing capability over nationality. They don't care where you come from. They care what you can do. And Indian professionals have proven time and again that they can do more with less, solve bigger problems faster, and learn new things more quickly than anyone else. It's not about cheap labor anymore. That's an old idea. The new reality is that Indian professionals are providing high-level strategic thinking, not just technical support. They are building ecosystems, not just writing code. They are becoming the architects of the future. And that, in many ways, redefines what power looks like in the 21st century. In this context, when Trump issues warnings to Google or Microsoft, he's not just trying to protect American jobs. He's trying to preserve a model of power that is quickly becoming outdated. He wants to keep influence within borders. But innovation does not follow borders. It follows brilliance. And brilliance is now coming from everywhere, especially from India. This is not something you can stop with policies or slogans. It's something you can only respond to by becoming better, faster, smarter. That's why forward-thinking leaders don't try to block talent. They attract it. They create environments where that talent can thrive because they know that in the race of the future, the country or company with the best minds will win. So this fear that is expressed in political language is actually an admission that the world is being rebuilt not by bombs or ballots but by brains. And in that rebuilding, Indian minds are playing a central role not just as employees or immigrants but as leaders, creators, and visionaries. This is the true nature of the shift from capital which can be stored to capability which must be earned every day. And it is this shift that has put Indian talent at the center of the global conversation about the future. Every generation has a turning point where people break free from limitations not by force, but by mindset. For India, that turning point is now. For decades, Indian talent was underestimated not because it was weak, but because it was hidden. But today, you see Indian minds rising to the top of global organizations. You see them building companies, leading billion-dollar corporations, creating new technologies, and solving world-class problems. This is not a coincidence. In the past, the world respected countries that had oil, armies, or factories. But in the 21st century, the most valuable asset is human intelligence. And when you look closely, India is producing this asset in massive quantities. Not just in terms of population, but in terms of quality. And that quality comes from something that is very difficult to copy, a unique mental model built through struggle and ambition. You see, when someone grows up in a place with fewer resources, they learn how to maximize everything. They don't waste time. They don't waste money. They don't waste opportunity. That mindset becomes part of who they are. Many Indians grow up in competitive environments. Getting into a good school means outperforming hundreds of thousands of others. Getting a good job means passing through layers of tests, interviews, and social pressure. That process, though painful, trains the brain to be disciplined, focused, and sharp. It's like a forge where fire molds steel. By the time an Indian engineer or student lands in Silicon Valley or London or Dubai, they've already survived 100 battles back home. That battle-tested thinking gives them an edge, not just in coding or science, but in leadership, in resilience, in adaptability. And let's not ignore the role of the family. In Indian households, education is not a choice, it's a responsibility. Parents save their entire lives to give their children a better future. That creates a culture where learning is sacred. It's not about degrees. It's about the mindset that learning never stops. That's why Indian professionals continue to upskill, learn new things, adapt to changing environments. It's part of their DNA. And in today's fast-changing world, that mindset is more valuable than any traditional experience. What's fascinating is that Indian talent doesn't wait for perfect conditions. They don't complain about what they don't have. They make the most of what they do have. If internet is slow, they build offline solutions. If electricity is unreliable, they learn to code during short windows of time. If job opportunities are limited, they create their own businesses or freelance online. This ability to be resourceful, to find a way forward no matter the constraint. That is what global CEOs and entrepreneurs are made of. In a global economy, companies don't hire based on flags. They hire based on value. And Indian professionals are delivering value at every level, not just as employees, but as problem solvers, as leaders, as innovators. You see it in the way they handle pressure, in the way they communicate across cultures, in the way they balance humanity with ambition. That's a rare mix. And it's winning trust in boardrooms across the world. What's happening now is not temporary. It's a long-term shift. When you build a culture where knowledge is respected, where people believe in growth, where families support education even at great personal cost, that country becomes unstoppable. India is reaching that tipping point. It's not just about CEOs of big companies. It's about the millions of others, the software developers in Bengaluru, the data scientists in Hyderabad, the students studying late at night in small towns, the startup founders experimenting with new ideas in cafes and co-working spaces. All of them are part of this revolution. They are proving that your background doesn't matter as much as your mindset, that you don't need to be born into privilege to lead. You just need the willingness to work hard and think big. This is what scares many traditional power structures, because when people rise from the bottom purely through merit, they challenge the status quo. They don't ask for permission. They don't wait for approval. They simply rise. That rising force is Indian talent. Bold, prepared, and unstoppable. Not because the world gave them a chance, but because they took it. And when a generation starts thinking like that, no one can stop what happens next. I want to talk about something very real, something that's shaking the corridors of power in Washington, the boardrooms of Silicon Valley, and the minds of political giants like Donald Trump. No, it's not fear in the traditional sense. It's not a fear of people or passports. It's a fear of potential. It's the realization that a quiet storm is rising from the east, not of missiles. When someone fears you, they pay attention to you. They study you. They try to understand what makes you different, what gives you an edge. Fear, in this sense, is not hatred. It is not rejection. It is a form of respect even if it comes disguised as criticism or resistance. When Trump speaks with concern about Indian professionals, when he warns tech giants like Google and Microsoft about their increasing reliance on foreign talent, he's not simply speaking from a political agenda. He is acknowledging, perhaps without fully admitting it, that Indian minds have become too powerful to ignore that their influence is no longer optional or temporary. It is foundational. And when you start seeing that reaction from global power figures, it means you've crossed a line. You've moved from being invisible to being influential. That is the true beginning of leadership. True leadership is not something you demand. It is something that happens when people cannot deny your presence, and Indian talent through years of effort, learning, and resilience has reached that point. The world may not always say it openly, but in their actions in hiring decisions in strategic roles in billion-dollar mergers, they are making it clear Indian professionals are no longer just part of the system. They are starting to shape the system. That transition always generates friction because leadership threatens the status quo. It shifts the power from the old guard to the new thinkers, and any time that happens there will be noise. That noise, sometimes masked as political fear or protectionism, is a signal of your impact. What makes this rise so remarkable is that it did not come from dominance. It came from contribution. Indian professionals did not walk into global markets with force or entitlement. They walked in with skill, with commitment, with the mindset to solve problems and create value. And over time, that quiet competence turned into visible influence. You see it in the way global product strategies are now shaped by Indian consumer data. You see it in the way global tech events are filled with Indian speakers and founders. You see it in how major boardrooms now consider India not just as a market, but as a source of intellectual capital and leadership. Trump's words, while politically charged, reflect a deeper fear of losing control. In his world, American dominance in innovation has been a given for decades. But when the faces of innovation start changing, when the architects of the future speak with different accents and come from different continents, that dominance feels threatened. The fear is not really about job loss or immigration. It's about identity. It's about who defines the next chapter of the global story. And right now, Indian minds are increasingly the authors of that story. That's a shift that no policy can fully reverse because it's not driven by politics. It's driven by performance. Every major shift in global leadership starts with resistance. History shows us that new leaders are first ignored, then questioned, then resisted, and finally accepted. Indian professionals are now in that third phase, being resisted not because they are weak, but because they are strong, because they are rising, because they are becoming role models for others, not just in India, but across the world. And that kind of leadership, born from persistence and humility, is the most difficult to defeat. It doesn't depend on power structures, it creates its own. This new wave of influence is also different because it is not individualistic. Indian leadership often brings with it a sense of collective responsibility. Many Indian CEOs, engineers, and founders build communities, support networks, mentor younger talent, and invest back into education and social impact. They are not just climbing the ladder. They are extending it. That is real leadership, not just succeeding, but helping others rise as well. That creates a multiplier effect. It ensures that the next generation will not just follow the current leaders, they will go further. And that is what makes fear inevitable. Because when leadership becomes generational, it cannot be stopped. What is happening today is not just a shift in who gets hired or promoted. It is a shift in who gets hurt. Indian professionals are not just executing ideas anymore. They are creating them. They are not just reacting to trends. They are setting them. They are not just fitting into systems. They are designing new systems. This is leadership by evolution, not revolution. And it is far more powerful because it cannot be undone. Once people see what you can do, they can never unsee it. Once you prove your value, you do not need to convince anyone. Your results speak, your impact grows, and your influence becomes permanent. That is why fear arises, because it signals the emergence of a force that will define what comes next. When we talk about leadership in technology, it's easy to focus on the top. The CEOs who stand on stages, speak at global forums, and shape the narrative of innovation. And yes, Indian leaders like Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella, Arvind Krishna, Shantanu Narayan, and many others are now symbols of what Indian intellect can achieve on a global level. But this is just the surface. The real story, the more powerful story, is not just about the top of the pyramid. It's about the thousands, even millions of Indian minds working behind the scenes building, coding, designing, researching, and innovating. These are the people truly powering the global innovation engine. This movement is not symbolic. It's structural. In companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, you'll find Indian professionals at every level leading AI research, driving cloud infrastructure, designing user experiences, managing billion-dollar product lines, and setting new standards in cybersecurity, data science. What makes Indian professionals so effective in these roles is not just their technical skills, it's their mindset. Many grew up in systems with limitations, unstable infrastructure, limited access to resources, and intense academic competition. But rather than being slowed down by these constraints, they learned how to innovate around them. They became experts in doing more with less. That experience, often seen as a disadvantage, turned out to be a hidden strength. When placed in high-resource environments, their productivity increases exponentially. Their creativity is not dependent on ideal conditions, is activated by challenge. Inside Silicon Valley, this mindset is now indispensable. The world's most complex digital systems, from Google Search to Azure Cloud, are maintained and scaled by teams that include a large percentage of Indian engineers. These engineers aren't just maintaining code bases, they're pushing the boundaries of what technology can do. Whether it's designing self-learning algorithms, building data centers that power the internet, or developing tools that help millions of businesses go online, the Indian presence is unmistakable and unavoidable. Startups, too, are a space where Indian talent is rewriting rules. Founders of Indian origin are launching companies in fintech, edtech, health tech, AI, and clean energy, many of which are going on to become unicorns. These entrepreneurs are not just replicating Western ideas. They are solving global problems using local experience. They understand scale, they understand scarcity, and they understand the user. That combination makes their solutions both practical and powerful. In research and academia, the pattern continues. Indian scientists are conducting cutting-edge research in AI, quantum computing, and biotechnology at institutions like MIT, Stanford, and the University of Cambridge. Their work is shaping patents, publishing papers that are globally cited, and forming the basis of next-generation technology. These individuals are not anomalies. They are part of a wave, and the wave is growing stronger. This silent revolution is also supported by Indian communities abroad. Indian professionals in the U.S., Europe, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia are forming networks of mentorship, investment, and support. These networks help others rise faster, smarter, and stronger. It's a system of collective advancement, not just individual success. That's why the Indian footprint in technology is not only deep, it's wide. It's not a flash, it's a foundation. The most powerful part of this story is its scale. For every Indian CEO in the news, there are thousands of developers and problem solvers working across every sector of technology: cybersecurity, fintech, e-commerce, semiconductors, robotics, virtual reality. Their work may not make headlines, but it's embedded in the systems people use every day all over the world. That's how influence truly works. Not by being loud, but by being essential. So, while political leaders and commentators might point to a few Indian names at the top, the deeper truth is that Indian talent is woven into the very structure of global innovation. It's in the code, in the servers, in the AI models, in the databases, and in the strategic decisions being made in boardrooms from San Francisco to Singapore. This isn't about representation. This is about contribution. This isn't about optics. This is about architecture. The global technology engine is running, and more often than not, Indian minds are keeping it alive, efficient, and moving forward.